Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Canyon City Historic Preservation Commission regular meeting on Wednesday, May 22nd. Jim, will you take roll, please?
Sure. Lauren Flick, absent. Chris Jenkins,
Here.
Lester Lamone,
Here.
Mike Madone, absent. Rich Millard,
Here.
via Zoom. Jim Nelson here. Mildred Wentz.
Here.
First item on the agenda this morning, as everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of 4/24 as presented.
Do we have a
I'll second.
Roll.
Lauren Flick. Chris Jenkins,
Yes.
Lester Lamone,
Yes.
Mike Madone, Rich Millard,
Yes.
Jim Nelson, yes. Millie Wentz.
Yes.
Approved, and the first item on the agenda is just an update on the new method laundry. Rick, do you have anything you can update us on the progress?
Leo, the Public Works Director, and I met with the contractors and engineer a week ago or so. I've been doing a lot, so I'm trying to put the timing together. But to talk about whether we could get an estimate, just a rough estimate of what it would cost to potentially preserve the facade. The answer is no, basically, that there's just too much work that has to go into it to determine. They did say that they could take the stucco down early in the process, and that is what they and city administrator are trying to work out when and how they do that, primarily because taking the stucco off would block right away and potentially parking spaces downtown. And the entire planning for this building was to put minimal impact as much as possible on our downtown for the demo. So we talked about trying to get an estimate. It doesn't seem right now that they're comfortable giving anything. They need to work their way back from the back to the front, and as they're piecing it, taking it apart, they'll become more aware of the structural integrity of the building, but they weren't comfortable giving us any kind of an estimate of what it would take to do it. We've got now, all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. We have the demo permit signed by the abatement contractor, so ready to go. There is, and I didn't read the email yet. I've been too busy, but there's something to do with a 10-day waiting period that, quite honestly, is probably already done. So we'll be beginning demolition very soon. Contractors are ready to go to take it down. So really more of the timing of the stucco side of it, I guess, is the bigger question mark at this point. And I haven't been part of those conversations other than there would be an impact on Main Street to do that. So more to come, I guess, but it's the process is going to begin very soon. They're starting from the back to the front, so the front won't be impacted for a while because they need to figure out they need to get the machinery out of there first. They need to clear the place out. They need to take a look at the walls, figure out how to shore up the walls first before they start taking it down. And then they'll piece it apart, take I think 10 by 10 sections of the second floor down, bit by bit, to begin to disassemble the building. And then when they get to a certain point, they'll be able to take a look at, better able to take a look at what it would take structurally to shore it up. Still questions about how you put access through, depending where the structural support is now for the facade. How do you get access through it if it were to be a parking lot? So I think a lot of those questions still have to be answered yet in terms of salvaging the facade. But Plan is to start demo ASAP.
Thank you, Rick. And just to bring everybody up to date, in our discussions at the last meeting, we discussed asking the city to consider at least getting some numbers put together to preserve the original facade, not the stucco that covers that facade. And I appreciate, Rick, your efforts and the city's efforts to at least discuss that. The city council did vote to approve the MOU and said that they had no intentions of saving that facade at the meeting. However, there were some discussions after that to at least possibly look at what the contractor might be able to work into without costing the city any additional funds. So I'm a little bit optimistic that at least the discussions are there, but as we've said since the beginning, we don't know what's behind the stucco, so
Yeah.
it
And-
might not be even worth considering, but at least I'm glad to see that there were at least some talks to consider it, and that's where it stands.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Rick or myself?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remind the commission and those in attendance of Aaron's suggestion at our last meeting, the possibility of discussing moving the Modern Way Plaza activity into that new method space versus Clock Tower corner. I think that's a worthy. I think it's a worthy consideration, considering their proximity to each other and logistics and of development and those kinds of things. I know the city's already put some money into some design efforts around that, but I thought it was a good suggestion, and I'd like to remind the commission that is a suggestion and encourage the city to have some conversations about that.
I would recommend that the commission take that directly to the city and not through me, because it won't go anywhere through me. But, you know,
Okay.
I'm not high enough on that,
I think that
list.
that's a good suggestion, that if we want to at least ask the city to possibly consider other uses rather than a parking lot, that we could certainly bring that before the city council, if that's what the commission wants.
There will be questions that can't be answered with that, though. I mean, depending on, granted, design for that could take quite a while for a plaza, but depending on the contamination, we may or may not be able to do much of anything underneath that, whatever we put there, would blacktop, concrete, whatever the case may be. But if it comes back relatively clean and it doesn't take much to remediate, then it's a possibility. We just don't know right now.
Sure. Well, I don't think they even, they don't even know of the suggestion. So I think it would behoove us, if it's something that we want to do, just to support the suggestion going
Mhm.
into city council. So at least it's on their radar and they can discuss it. So I don't know how they're, I would move that we suggest formally to the city commission that came to us as a community suggestion and that we would encourage that conversation.
Do we need to do that in the form of a motion?
At least for discussion, of support on this board?
Yes. Any other discussion?
Fine.
I need a second if it's a motion.
I would think you'd want to, whether it needs to be an agenda item, I don't know, but, no.
And what is your motion?
That was my motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Lauren Flick, Chris Jenkins,
Yes.
Lester Lamone,
Yes.
Mike Madone, absent.
Yes.
Oh, Mike's
Oh.
on, Mike's
Okay.
online.
There's Mike.
Welcome,
Not
Mike.
absent.
Mike, yes. Rich Ballard,
Yes.
Jim Nelson, yes. Billy Wentz,
Yes.
Motion passes. Lisa, could you pass that along to the city and get us on the agenda for the next meeting, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, moving on to item number 5, discussion on development of guidelines for historic preservation. Lisa, could you give us a summation of what we are discussing?
So, discussion of development of guidelines for historic preservation, specifically for the downtown historic district, was one of the goals for the 2024 vision of Canyon City for the commission to complete. And I sent out an example of design guidelines from another community in Colorado, and basically outlining what we could follow possibly in creating our own. And I would think this would be something that would be a priority for the commission to complete within this next year, if possible. But in doing so, I encourage the commission to set up a committee to develop this set of guidelines.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think that the committee could draft or begin working on a concept and report back to the commission as a whole from time to time, and then recommend a final product. So that would be, I think, a good way to develop that.
Excellent.
Jim, do you think that it would be made up of only board members, or would you reach out to, or do you have an idea about reaching out to any other peoples or groups to be involved in that?
I think that would be a good approach. If others would like to join the effort, I don't think it has to be entirely board members.
Do we need to set up additional meetings to discuss that, Lisa, or do we want to include that at the same time frame as our public outreach meeting, or do we want to do something separate?
We could do something separate if you like, if that's what the committee wants.
Okay, and I think we should probably get started on that quickly, I would think.
Yeah.
No sense in delaying. So this time frame on Wednesdays works pretty well for me at 4 o'clock, other than when we have our regular meetings. So if that's something doable, we could do at the museum, or do you want to do it here? It just really is what would work best for.
The museum is fine, if that
Okay.
works, yeah.
And shall we set something up from 2 weeks from today at 4 p.m.? Would that work? That would be the 5th of June. Everybody be able to put that on their calendar? And at least I would like to see most of the commission members there, but we could also open it up to any other individuals who may want to participate. Aaron, I think you might be, you like to show up on Wednesdays, so might be a good one for you to participate in. So that will be next June the 5th, and we'll call this a Historic Preservation Guidelines Committee meeting. That work for everybody?
Yeah.
At 4 p.m.
Works for me, thanks.
Okay. Work for you, Mike? Are you
Yeah,
there,
that
Mike?
should work for me.
Okay, all right, then that's what we'll plan on.
Museum or here?
The museum at 4 p.m.
Museum.
Any other discussion on development of guidelines for historic preservation, or should we move on to the next item?
Move on.
Okay, discussion on recognition for historic preservation.
So I added this to the agenda at the request of another commissioner on the commission regarding awarding or recognizing great work for historic preservation within the community. And that could take on a number of different avenues of how the commission or how the community would want to recognize projects of this nature within Canyon City. I know the Fremont County Heritage Commission has also discussed something similar to try to recognize historic preservation projects at the county level. I don't know if the commission's really decided on anything formal or a way of doing that. And it's basically a logistics questions of how the commission would want to go about recognizing those types of outstanding projects. They do that at the state level. I know they do that annually throughout the state. I don't know of very many communities at a smaller level recognizing those types of historic preservation projects and how they go about doing it. But it really all depends on what the commission would be interested in recognizing those people, those projects.
So the technical question, Lisa, I would have would be, are we, I guess are we just looking for examples of historic preservation, or are we looking for examples of historic preservation activities that are pursuing either recognition or tax credits? So that we would understand the owner's motivation versus our own, I guess.
It's basically up to you, up to the commission, what you guys want to recognize for these types of projects, whether there's an application process that you want an owner to go through to be recognized or like get an award, or if it's something more informal and just announcing them. Or
I just wonder how we would know that the activities or the efforts were underway. So obviously an application for local recognition would put them on our radar.
yes,
If they're not, I'm not sure how we would know, other than a simple
just
building permit.
yeah, just observation.
Yeah, right. Well, at
So-
least, historic preservation gets well, I don't know about residential permit projects. They don't cross your desk, right? Only
No.
commercial. So-
Wouldn't you need criteria first? I mean,
Well,
you
I
know,
think the
shape it up a little.
Well, no, I think, well, the reason I was asking this is because in my mind, criteria actually comes from either the state or the local, in terms of renovation criteria.
I had the feeling that
National
local
Park
was still
Service.
open for development, that state had already formed up, but at local that hadn't been addressed yet.
So we've never had any formal way of recognizing outstanding historic preservation projects locally, except for an informal way of recognizing them either through a historic, through a post on the museum's Facebook page or something along those lines. So if you wanted to have a more formal process, a local level through the commission, reviewing applicants, that would be something that we could possibly do. It'd be whether or not you'd want to pursue that avenue of recognition.
I think we could have a nominating, the public can nominate projects that they feel that should be recognized, and maybe some, press or social media posting that would, tell people that we want to recognize people who are taking steps in our community to preserve our history, and we are taking nominations for those, and if we don't get a lot of feedback, then obviously we can regroup and try something different. But open it up to people who might want to apply for recognition. I don't see that being an issue either. Are there a set of guidelines that the state uses on their?
I believe so, yeah, and I'd have to look at
Yeah,
their
maybe we'll glance
application
at that and
process
just
for
see
guidelines.
exactly what they follow. That might be a set of guidelines that might give us a little bit more guidance, but I like that idea. I think that, you know, whatever we can do to say thanks to people who take those steps to preserve, and it doesn't have to be commercial, it can be an historic home or, but I mean, there's some obvious projects out there that already fall within that, and I have no problem with them being nominated and being recognized as well. So I don't think we have to do anything extravagant other than, you know, invite them in to a commission meeting and thank them and take a picture with them and once again, just recognize the efforts that they've taken to
Great.
preserve our history. I like the idea of at least taking a look what state guidelines are, just so we've got an idea, and maybe we can talk, revisit this issue in our next meeting, and probably set a time frame if we want to do one a year, or one every 6 months, or, you know, if it's a lot of work, then obviously one a year is probably a lot. If it's not a whole lot of effort, then we can sure do it, you know, biannually.
Mr. Chairman, I might suggest that we initially send that effort to the Public Outreach Committee to flesh out details.
Good idea.
I think we can do that in our next meeting. And that would be next month's meeting. We'll discuss it at that time. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, do we need to vote on the design guidelines subcommittee?
Probably should.
All right. Lauren Flick? Absent. Chris Jenkins?
Yes.
Lester Lamone?
Yes.
Mike Madone?
Yes.
Rich Millard?
Yes.
Jim Nelson, yes. Millie Wentz?
Yes.
And I'm not sure you had a motion, but other than we did approve it, though.
Yeah.
We're all in favor of that motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else we want to add on recognition for historic preservation? All right, then we're going to move on to the Public Outreach Committee report. Lisa?
So we just had our window repair workshop this month. It was fairly well attended. We're hoping for more, but he did a really good presentation. The museum did record the program at the museum, but not at the site location that we went to following. We hope to do something similar maybe in the fall of a different topic, so we'll look into that. And then over the summer, we're also looking at doing either a walking tour or maybe a special tour, either Main Street or just off Main Street, and reaching out to people who might be interested in opening up their historic property for in-house tours if possible. But we'll look into that probably July, August, or September at the latest.
Any other items? We did discuss possibly seeking a grant on,
Yeah, looking into, in the future, for interpretive panels, for highlighting historic properties throughout town, looking at that maybe for a CLG grant next year.
thank you. And any questions on public outreach? The review committee report.
So we did receive an application for a certificate of alteration this last month for review. It was for 123 North 15th Street, the Maupin Building in the old post office block. We sent it to the review committee for assessment to see whether or not it needed to go to a formal review for the commission. And the committee determined that the project outlined in the application form did not require any formal review process. It was just mainly a swapping of doors on the building.
And announcements, webinars, and training opportunities.
So the next CLG program that they're doing is going to be May 30th, and it's Certified Local Governments and in Colorado Main Street. That's with History Colorado and DOLA, and that's at 9 a.m. online, and you can register for that through the CLG portal. And then the following CLG discussion in June is on LGBTQ plus history in Colorado, and that is scheduled for June 12th at noon, and that's also online, and you can register for that via the CLG portal as well.
Okay. At this time, I'll open it up for any public comments or questions or statements. No comments. Anybody else on the commission have any questions or concerns they want to bring up prior to adjournment? If not, I think we will adjourn. Our next meeting is on June 26th at 4 p.m. Thank you.